Long ago, in one of the ancient lands of Africa, there lay a quiet village named Igbolo, a place where the wind carried the scent of palm wine and burning firewood. The villagers of Igbolo were known for their warmth, their laughter, and their deep respect for the customs passed down from their ancestors. They shared everything: food, stories, joy, and even pain. To be part of Igbolo was to belong, to live under one spirit, one name, one heartbeat. But there was one thing the people of Igbolo would never accept. Among all their tolerance and kindness, one belief stood firm like the roots of the Iroko tree: they would never welcome a half-caste. To them, anyone born of mixed blood was cursed, a being that carried confusion between worlds, neither fully one of them nor entirely of the other. It was part of their ancient law, spoken by elders and sealed in the dust of time: a half-caste may walk through our village, but never among our people. In this same village, among the swaying palms and whispering streams, lived a young woman of striking beauty. Her name was Enuala. In Igbolo, Enuala was a name that carried both beauty and sorrow. She was a half-caste, born of mixed blood, and because of that alone, she was rejected by all who lived in the village. The people despised her with a passion so deep it burned like dry firewood. Even the parts her feet touched were avoided. If she walked through a narrow road, no villager would step there until the rain had washed away her footprints. The village stream that belongs to everyone, the lifeblood of Igbolo, was forbidden to her. The king and elders declared that her presence would stain its purity. So every morning, before the cock crowed, Enuala would lift her clay pot on her head and travel a long distance to a neighboring village just to fetch water. It was part of how she lived, part of the quiet suffering that shaped her days. Ever since she was a child, Enuala had known only rejection. The villagers called her names that pierced her heart like thorns. Sometimes, when she saw them coming from afar, she would run off the path and hide among the tall grasses or slip quietly into the bush, just to escape their insults, their laughter, their cruel stares. The only family she had was her dear mother, a gentle woman who had loved her beyond the scorn of the world. But years ago, death took her away, leaving Enuala alone to bear the weight of her fate. Yet, though the villagers despised her, there was something about Enuala they could never deny: she was a healer. Her hands carried power, her herbs carried healing. When sickness struck, when fever burned, the same people who spat at her name would come running to her door. In those moments, they forgot she was a half-caste. And Enuala, with a heart too kind, never turned them away. She healed them all, without hesitation, without a second thought. But once their strength returned, their hatred returned too. One morning, Enuala's sleep was interrupted by a loud knock on her door. She stood up and came outside, only to find some sick villagers lying on the floor in her compound. Beside them stood two of the king's bodyguards. They ordered her to attend to the sick villagers and make sure they got well. They also told her it was a direct command from the king himself. Enuala looked at them and said softly, "I wish to help, but the problem here is that today is Eke Market Day. I do not heal people on this day because it is a rule that I must obey." The bodyguards exchanged glances, their faces tightening with fury. Are you saying your useless rule is more important than the king's order? One of them barked. You have been ordered to heal these people, and you have no other choice but to obey. Enuala lowered her head and said gently, I really wish to help, but if I should go against this rule, I am afraid they will die. The people I heal today will not survive. Please, take them home. Bring them back tomorrow, and I promise I won't hesitate. But her words only made them angrier. The bodyguard stormed closer to Enuala and began to beat her mercilessly. Who are you to think you have the right to choose your foolish rule over the order of the great king of this land? One shouted as they struck her again and again. They beat her until she could barely move her hands. Still, they forced her to treat the sick people lying helplessly on the ground. With trembling hands, Enuala gathered her healing herbs and gave them to the sick villagers. But just as she had warned, the moment they swallowed her medicine, their bodies went still, their souls left them instantly. The bodyguard stared in shock, then turned to her with hatred. You have poisoned them, one shouted. Without listening to her plea, they dragged her by the arm and took her to the palace. They knelt before the king and said, Your Majesty, this half-caste has poisoned your people. The sick ones you sent us with are all dead. The king looked at Enuala with cold, burning eyes. He did not ask her what had happened, nor did he allow her to explain herself. Instead, his voice thundered through the court, You and your cursed lineage are nothing but disgrace to this land. And since you dare to poison my people, I will make sure you never live to regret it. Guards, the king called, take her and bury her alive, and let her spirit join those she killed. Tears streamed down Enuala's face as she fell to her knees. Please, Your Majesty, she cried, it wasn't my fault. She tried to explain herself, but the king turned away from her cries. His voice rose again, filled with bitterness and rage. He lifted his hand and declared, A life for a life. Take her away, bury her alive. The guards seized Enuala as she screamed and begged for mercy, her voice echoing through the palace walls. The guards dragged Enuala deep into the forest. She cried and begged them to spare her life, but her tears were like water pouring on stone, useless and ignored. They dug a pit before her eyes while she wept and called upon the gods for mercy. Please, she cried, I did not mean to kill them. I warned you both. I warned you not to make me heal on Eke Market Day. But her words meant nothing to them. One of the guards laughed cruelly, saying, The king has spoken, and his word is law. A life for a life, woman, now meet your end, Enuala screamed, but they pushed her into the pit. The ground was cold beneath her feet, and fear clutched her heart. Bury her, one of the guards shouted, and they began to throw sand over her body, their faces hard as stone. Her voice grew weaker as the earth covered her chest, her mouth, her cries. The last sound that escaped from her lips was a faint whisper to the wind, I will be back. That same day, something that had never happened before in the history of Igbolo occurred. It rained, but only where Enuala was buried. The rain did not stop for days. It soaked the soil until Enuala's grave split open, and from that crack rose her spirit, standing before the broken mound. Her voice rang through the storm, fierce and vengeful. I warned them. I warned the guards not to make me heal on Eke Market Day, but they did not listen. I told them, if I treat the sick villagers on Eke Market Day, they will die. They forced me. They forced me to do it. They should be held responsible for their deaths. But instead, all of you chose to bury me alive without even hearing my side of the story. She raised her arms toward the heavens. I promise to make the king and his guards pay for what they have done to me. Her spirit left the graveside and moved into the village. She turned their river into blood, destroyed their crops, and she killed animals, goats and fowls. She stormed into the palace like thunder. She grabbed the king by his clothes, dragged him from his chair, and snatched the crown from his head.
Without hesitation, she climbed the throne steps, placed the crown on her head, and sat upon the throne.
Her voice, cold and sharp, echoed through the hall. From this moment on, I am the new king of Igbolo, she declared. And you are my slave now, she said to the king. She leaned forward until her eyes were hot coals. Refuse me, and I will kill you and bury your children alive. The king lay sprawled on the floor, his limbs numb. He could not move. Terror had rooted him where he fell. He had never seen a spirit return, never dreamed the dead could take a body and walk again, and the sight of her stole the breath from him. At last, with a voice that trembled like a dry reed, he managed to ask, "What do you want from us?" You are already dead." "Yes, I am dead," she replied, each word cutting. "But how can I rest in peace while those who killed me are still living?" "You are alive. The two guards you sent to my house that day are still alive. How can my grave hold me while all of you walk free?" She pointed, steady and commanding, "Bring them before me, the two bodyguards you sent that morning with those sick villagers. I want to see them." Around them the cabinet members watched in frozen horror. Some pressed their palms to their mouths, others clutched their robes as if to hold themselves together. The great hall, so often filled with pomp and speech, fell into a shaking silence. No one moved to obey, yet no one dared to refuse. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what the dead-turned ruler would do next. Immediately the two guards were summoned before her. By the wave of her hand, she made them kneel. "Go on," she said coldly. "Tell everyone how the two of you beat me up and forced me to apply treatment on the sick villagers. I clearly told you that if I treat them, they might die. But the two of you ignored my words and said it was a direct order from the king himself." Behind her, the king screamed, "I only asked them to tell you to apply the treatment. I never told them to hit you, or to force you." The two guards began to apologize. They fell to their knees, begging her to forgive them. But Enuala's eyes burned with fury as she spoke, her voice echoing like thunder. "You think your apology is enough? You think your sorry will bring me back to life, or those you forced me to heal? Do you think your apology will bring us back to life? And you, king?" Enuala spat, her voice low and hard. "You didn't even give me a listening ear. What kind of king judges by one mouth? But do not think I will kill you, nor will I kill these two bodyguards. If I killed the three of you, who then would speak for me in the land of the dead? I felt so lonely there. That is why my spirit came back. to take the three of you with me." The king sobbed, clutching at the air. "Believe me, I did not tell them to hit you or force you to apply the treatment." "So what if you did not say the word?" Enuala cut him off, stepping closer until he trembled under her gaze. "You are the one who declared I should be buried alive. Ever since I grew up in this village, I have never known love from any of you, because I was a half-caste. You and your subjects treated me like dirt. Not once did you give me a reason to smile." She pointed at the two guards, then at the king. "You and these two men will accompany me to the land of the dead. That is why I have returned." Her words dropped like stones into the stunned silence. The king's voice died to a whisper. The guards could only weep. Around them, the cabinet members were still holding their breaths in fear. Enuala's eyes burned with fury as she turned toward the trembling cabinet members. "You," she said, her voice slicing through the hall like thunder. "Take some men and go into the forest, find the grave where I was buried. Dig it open and make it ready again. Tomorrow, on Eke Market Day, I shall return to the land of the dead, and I will not go alone. The king and these two bodyguards will follow me there." The cabinet members exchanged terrified glances, their bodies trembling like leaves in the wind. They knew the vengeance of the gods was upon them, and they had no choice but to obey the spirit's command. Then Enuala turned slowly toward the palace guards, her eyes glowing like embers. "Take them," she ordered coldly. "Lock the king and these two guards in the palace dungeon. Keep them alive, but do not let them see the sun when dawn comes tomorrow. They will be buried beside me in the same grave." The guards obeyed without hesitation. They seized the king and dragged the two terrified bodyguards beside him. The cabinet members left the palace in fear and confusion. Their footsteps echoed through the silent night as they made their way to the hut of the village's chief priest. His shrine was deep within the forest, lit only by the dim glow of palm oil lamps and the smell of burning herbs. They sat with him, and spoke quickly, their voices shaking. "Great One, we have come to seek your help. Enuala's spirit has returned, and she has ordered us to dig up the grave where she was buried. She said she will go back to the land of the dead tomorrow, taking the king and his two guards with her. Please, help us stop her." The chief priest sat in silence for a long moment, his eyes closed as he drew sacred symbols in the sand before him. He murmured incantations, threw cowries, and stared deeply into the flame. Then his voice came low and heavy, filled with dread. "I have searched the spirit world," he replied. "I have spoken to the winds, the earth, and the ancestors, but there is no way to stop her. Her actions have been permitted by the gods of our land. Enuala was wronged, and now the gods themselves have granted her vengeance." The men gasped. "Then what should we do, Great One?" One of them asked, his voice trembling. The chief priest shook his head slowly. "To stand against her is to challenge the gods of this great village," he warned. "And that is a battle none of you will survive. Go, and do what she has asked of you. Dig the grave, and prepare for what must come." The cabinet members looked at one another with fear and sorrow. Then, without another word, they turned and left the shrine, the echo of the priest's warning following them into the night. The next morning, Before the cock crowed, the cabinet members gathered in fear. Their faces were pale as they led a group of young men into the forest, carrying shovels and torches. The mist hung low, and even the wind moved cautiously through the trees. They found the grave, Enuala's grave, just as she had said. The earth was still damp and heavy. As they began to dig, a strange wind swept through the forest, wailing like a voice from the unseen world. Still, they dug on, trembling but obedient. Before long, the villagers gathered, whispering among themselves. Then Enuala appeared before them, dressed in a flowing robe that shimmered with the glow of the other world. Behind her walked the king and the two bodyguards, their faces pale, their bodies shaking. They fell to their knees, pleading for mercy. The king wept bitterly. "I regret everything," he cried. "I passed judgment too soon. I should have listened. I should have asked what truly happened before condemning you. Forgive me, Enuala, have mercy." But Enuala's gaze was cold and unyielding. She looked down at him, her voice steady as stone. "Regret cannot wash away the sin of cruelty," she replied. The king and the two bodyguards were thrown into the same grave where she had once been buried alive. The people trembled as Enuala turned to face them all. "I know you do not accept half-caste," she said, her voice rolling through the forest like thunder. "Fine, do not accept them, but never again should you treat them wrongly. They are humans too. From today onward, they must be loved and treated kindly in this land. If this is not done, I will come back, and I will take more people with me." Her words struck the earth like fire, the ground shook, and the sky darkened. A sudden flash of lightning split the clouds, and when the people looked again, Enuala was gone. The villagers covered the grave, fear and awe in every heartbeat. When they returned to the village, the river that had once run red with blood now flowed clear again, pure and calm, as though peace had finally returned. From that day onward, the people of Igbolo learned a great lesson. No matter how terrible a case may seem, one must always listen to both sides before passing judgment. They learned never to condemn without truth, never to act without mercy, and never to let hatred rule their hearts. And so, the name Enuala was never forgotten. Her story became a warning to the proud and a lesson to the unjust, a tale passed down from one generation to the next, reminding all that cruelty, once sown, always returns to the one who planted it. The end.